live. Go live. Click the button now.
Just
Welcome to your awakening. Please take all as your reality is adjusted.
Welcome back, folks. Welcome back once again to another edition of Slightly Lagged. Another edition of Sol Excalibre on this Moon Day evening, just gone the 8 p.m. 2000 hours. Same as usual, as a few moments late. It's an interesting selection of recommendeds there from Google. Interesting how sometimes it picks out particular things, but yeah. Stop screen sharing that now. Right, yeah. Hello to everyone in the chat room. I'll try and keep an eye on the YouTube page chat room this time. I'm hoping it maybe will keep the more of the chat in the cache. Hopefully, maybe we'll see. But hello to everyone in the chat room so far. Benner, that's Dr. Rock. Standing room only in the chat room. And Stewie's got front row seat. Hello, Stewie. And Just Space Ghost Farts. Hello. I was just thinking, can your mask stop the smell of farts? Like, that experiment I suggested last Wednesday. Just to be a simple demonstration for people that masks won't stop a virus. Can you smell that fart? Yeah, then how is it going to stop a virus? Lynn Anderson, hello. Thanks for the recommended onion toasties. I'll let you know. When I give it a try. Dave Iron, hello. I'm scrolling down. Said hello. And reality chat. Pete is in the room. Got some tap throw. Hello. And CJ Boss. Hello. Michael Allen. Hello. And Vera Fagger. Hello. And Kim Sue. Hello. Welcome everyone in the chat room. Thanks for joining in. And get back to me notepad so I know where I'm going with my few bits of notes. I haven't made loads of notes this week. It still feels somewhat similar to, well, it would be 3 weeks ago now, wasn't it? The last episode, number 44, that I put up, where I was simply making the observation that, a lot of stuff is ticking over. There you go. A lot of the things we've been pointing at for however long now are starting to be implemented, are starting to emanate in the social world around us. And it's been the same for the last couple of weeks. Even more so over the last week, I feel, with the reinitiating of the local lockdowns and other stuff. I'll get into that a bit more. But things have been moving along. The snowball has been slowly growing. But in the subtitle this week, I thought it's quite a good phrase to use, and maybe it can become something that I can refer back to at some point later. Maybe reuse this phrase. Barefaced radio. It's a little bit of an oxymoron because if you broadcast it on radio, nobody can see your face. So saying barefaced radio is a little bit sort of, what? How are you going to know whether they're wearing a mask or not? Maybe from the sound of their voice, that kind of muffled, I'm talking to you from behind the nappy. But no, barefaced radio. It just, for me, it's been something of a underlying thread for a long time now that at some point there will emerge the equivalent of an underground railroad. There will emerge a networking of people that happens naturally, organically, a free association network of people keeping in touch with each other or just sharing information like we do online, communicating with each other. And eventually it will go more and more underground, because the system, as it tries to crack down on everything, can keep control of all the information, because the information and the movement of that information is where the power resides, because the information is used to control people's perceptions and ideas of what's going on in the world, and even what reality is and all that kind of stuff. So knowledge is power, is knowledge, power is knowledge. Those who have the power can control the knowledge that is available to the rest, to many other people. So that curtailing of information movement, the flow of true commerce, because the information is currency, and that flow of true commerce will require the system to suppress it, which will push it just underground, basically, or push it further and further underground. And eventually you will end up with the equivalent of the Underground Railroads. I know that's primarily relevant to slavery and the counter-slavery movements and things like that. But as a concept, it represents any resistance movement that begins to organically emerge under any tyrannical regime. It always happens every time throughout history. There's always some that dissent. And like the picture I had on the intro this week, or the sort of placeholder image for the broadcast, that's thanks to Big Tony for doing that. I mentioned it a while ago about that image from the Landesstadt rally in Germany. As far as I remember, that's the name of it. I'm just looking at my files to check. Landmesse gathering. Yeah, anyway, but it just occurred to me that if you could alter that image so that all the other people had masks on, it's highly appropriate to what is a lot of what is happening at the moment. So yeah, this week, barefaced radio. And as I say, I might turn that into something, or maybe reuse it again at some point, because that phrase, barefaced, I don't know what it is about it. There's something in it that maybe stirs a little bit of tribal primitivism in me. It's a bit like, the woad warriors. They wear no armor, but they paint their bodies with woad, and that is their spiritual protection. The symbols and the stylization, the tribal markings that they put on their bodies were their spiritual protection. In other cultures, they would tattoo the same thing. It's almost like having your family lineage and heritage tattooed into your skin, including that kind of beneficial charm effect of the great moments of your history, of your family, etc. Anyway, yeah, barefaced seems to, for me, elicit a kind of warrior perception of standing in the wind, standing in the rain, facing up to the storm with nothing on your face to protect you apart from maybe some whiskers, if you're whisker inclined like I am. But it stuck with me over the last few weeks when I saw the phrase somewhere online. I thought, yeah, that's an appropriate way to describe it. And I talked a few months ago when they were first suggesting masks being brought in, either as just a suggestion or even mandatory, etc. Here we are, it's mandatory. But I spoke back then about how, in effect, what we're dealing with is people with half a face, because that whole lower half of the face is obscured. So you lose a lot of the body language. And, I wasn't suggesting just from the point of view of somebody who's hard of hearing or deaf, so that they rely on lip reading to fill in the gaps or to hear what you're saying, to read what you're saying. But it's a lot to do with body language, full stop. The eyes, they do express a lot. And I remember Gary brought up the point of, it will help people concentrate on each other's eyes, and maybe people will learn to read each other's eye body language better because they're not fixating on the other parts of the face. But I think you're losing the whole. It's not even just your face; it's your whole body, your whole mannerisms. Do you do like Beelzebub Gates does whenever he's trying to stress a point that he's pressured on. He starts waving his hands at the sky. You ever notice that? Yeah, when like somebody asks him about, oh, conspiracy theorists are saying that you created the virus so you could sell people vaccines, and all of a sudden his hands start going up. Yeah, I wonder how that is. Body language wise, it's an appeal to a greater authority. He's attempting to suggest to you that he is channeling higher authority of truth to you as he is speaking. So he does this kind of, here, have this divine truth that I'm giving you. And it's not, obviously. But he subconsciously has this need to reach up to the divine and claim that authority so that he can present it to you. So, hiding half the face. It made me think of, people are going around half-faced, but I couldn't think of a phrase that suited it well, that was, easy on the tongue, as it were, even though people can't see your tongue, so does it matter? But it was more just that point of people losing a part of the communication that usually takes place between us. Not only have they inflicted a torture technique upon us by insisting on the social distancing, the oxymoronic social distancing, but they have further sliced into that level of communication by getting people to hide half of their face. I'm not going to go into some of the medical or scientific information about wearing masks and not wearing masks, and does it work against viruses or farts. Yeah, we talked about that a lot recently, and there's a lot of information out there for you to dig into if you choose to. If you only see the mainstream media like the BBC or CNN or stuff like that, you're going to get a very skewed and manipulated perception of the benefits or detriments of masks and inhaling your own gas and things like that. If you are more independently minded and look around for more information than just what's shoved in your face, then you'll find that there is a wealth of evidence and scientific research to show that it's not a good idea. Certainly not in the claims of it being able to prevent the second wave spread and all these bullshit justifications that they've used. So that's out there if you want to go and look into that. We've talked about those kind of things a few times recently, so I want to more just talk about that kind of bare face versus the half face. And this is classic, absolutely classic. It's such an annoyance to repeat constantly this same point. But there's two things that the system, it's the V, the two choices, the fifth age. Is it fifth age or is it two choices, left or right? The two foundational principles that the system relies on to manipulate people en masse is fear, and that can be fear of almost anything that can create enemies to generate the fear, etc. And divide and conquer, divide and rule. Those are the two main weapons that they almost always rely on and utilize to do what they do. Any Beelzebub Gates weak-ass little weedy nerd, if they have the cognitive ability to enact these kind of things, can manipulate the biggest, strongest warriors in their tribe and get them to fight each other if he knows the right things to say and how to manipulate those two different sides or parties to get them to hate on each other and fight each other. And then he's sat there being the player of both sides of the game. That's absolutely the fundamentals that the system relies on to use against the mass of people. And then you extrapolate from there, primarily relying on it controls the movement of information. By controlling the movement and availability of information, you can trick one side into thinking that it's all the fault of the other side. As Malcolm X put it, you can make, with clever use of the media, you can make the victim seem like the perpetrator. You can make a good seem like evil. I'm paraphrasing him heavily. Go and read his own work if you want to. But they can twist people's perception of reality to that kind of extreme level. And I've quoted this quote a few times recently from Voltaire. Those who can make you believe absurdities can make you commit atrocities. Because if they can persuade you that the other side are demons in human skin that like eating babies, then you're probably going to want to kill those people, or at least, do something bad to them. So they make you believe an absurdity, you'll end up committing an atrocity because your perception of reality has been so twisted and skewed. They have presented the enemy to you. So rather than your angst and protest and resistance being directed at their manipulations, you end up just fighting each other. And lo and behold, here we are now with the barefaces versus the half faces. Eloi and Morlocks, yeah, maybe in H.G. Wells' version of it. But this is as well primarily based on a symbolism of authority. And I've mentioned this a few times in recent episodes. They know full well, and even the WHO admitted this. I'll see if I can find the little clip-it picture that, again, Big T shared this one, and I'm glad you did grab this, mate, because it is perfectly suited and relevant to what we're talking about in that sense of they know full well that the reasons they're suggesting of wearing of masks is nothing to do with protecting you from a potential pathogen. It's nothing to do with any medical or scientific proof that the wearing of a surgical mask or a cloth face covering, as they keep telling us here in the UK, is going to be in any way beneficial against this alleged scamdemic. This is just a little clip it from an article. Here is a clue. On July 12th, Deborah Cohen, the medical correspondent of BBC Two's Newsnight, revealed an astonishing thing. The World Health Organization had reversed its advice on face masks from don't wear them to do wear them. But the key fact was that it had not done so because of scientific information. The evidence had not backed the wearing of face coverings. Note that. The evidence had not backed the wearing of face coverings from the WHO. So the reason they switched and went 180 on their supposed advice on face masks is because of political lobbying. That's it. So they know full well it's nothing to do with any proof or any advice from the supposed experts that they're referring to that claims that wearing a mask will help prevent the spread and prevent a second wave occurring and all this kind of, nothing to do with that. They've changed their suggestion based on being heavily lobbied by their financial supporters, which includes people like the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, which I think at the moment is the largest funder or something like that. I know he's in the top 5, but and for the governmental point of view, I haven't got a screenshot or anything of this. It came out in the news a few weeks ago, I think, and I can't remember who it was who said it, but anyway, paraphrasing. The masks and the requiring of wearing a mask, again, is nothing to do with protecting you from a potential virus. It is to remind you that the danger is still there, because they were worried that people were forgetting and becoming complacent as we were getting into summer. And they knew, like we saw the articles about the tens of thousands of people all rushing to the beaches everywhere and, oh, look at the silly COVIDiots all gathering together. They were worried that the general public would forget the fear that had been planted in them by the very same media propaganda bullshit that the government had been pumping out for the first 3 months of the year. Now they're forgetting it. They're suddenly realizing that, hey, the sun's come out. Let's get outside and enjoy the sunshine and get some vitamin D and see our friends and family. No, you've got to be reminded. You've got to be reminded, because even though they keep saying there's a scamdemic, where are all the bodies in the streets? Where are the overflowing hospitals? They don't exist. They really, really tried to make it seem like that was happening. But the wealth of evidence around you, just apply natural philosophy and your own observations. You go out and about walking around, you chat to people, and they say, oh, I went down the hospital the other day, it was empty. I had to go in for a little surgery the other day, and most of the wards were empty. So where's all these overflowing hospitals because of some crazy pandemic where it's so deadly and dangerous that people are dropping like flies because they weren't wearing a mask and gloves and a hood, and didn't happen, did it? So they knew people were forgetting the fear that had been suggested to them. So they thought it a good idea. Well, if we tell them to wear masks, that's a visual reminder that there's a danger, an invisible enemy. Again, I know I'm self-referencing a lot, but I've mentioned this a few times in the recent months. The invisible enemy. You can't see it, you can't punch it, you can't hide from it because it's omnipresent, it's everywhere, it's on everything. It's on each other. We're all transmitters, we're all, spreading everywhere. We've got to stay away from it. It's a perfect enemy for their propaganda. Because as long as they can keep control of the information narrative, they can keep persuading people that there is a threat there. It's like, oh, we know, we're sorry you can't see it, but it's so small that you can't actually see it. So you don't know whether it is really there or not. But we'll keep telling you that our experts say it is there. So, just believe us. And as long as they can keep pushing that perception and keep molding that perception, it carries on the fear. So to reinforce that, a mask helps remind people. It helps people think, oh, there must be something dangerous, even though I can't see it. I know I'm speaking like I'm talking to fucking 5-year-olds. And I know that the people who come and listen to these shows are not, that slow or simple-minded or naive or whatever, but I'm speaking as if I'm speaking to a general public because this is publicly available. So you just never know who's going to come across it or maybe where it will get shared and who gets to see it, etc. And I try to avoid too much jargon. I'll do it occasionally, same as I will sometimes, pull the rug out and descend very deep all of a sudden. I try to present things in such a way that they can be approachable by most people. Anyway, they're controlling people's perception to create that fear, to give them the impression there's something to be afraid of, even though they can't actually see it to confirm it for themselves. Obviously, you've got a side narrative there of controlling the information about infections and the test results and things like that. That is required to keep sustaining that perception that there is some kind of illness or threat of illness. So they're trying to set us against each other, the bare faces versus the half faces. Let me just sort out my screen if I can find. I'll come back to that. One. Let me first mention this one. This is just an article on RT. And I'm not showing this one because it's anything particularly great that RT have done. It's just because they're covering the same story that a lot of them have covered. And it was just a quick one to grab because it's got some examples in there that if you want to, you can go and check out. I think you've probably seen or heard about some of this stuff already because it's been building up over the last couple of weeks. Strangely enough, those summer weeks where I took a break and went away to get away from all the crazy madness, and when I come back, there's a load of crazy madness. It's funny that when you come back to the crazy madness, and guess what? It's all crazy madness. Yeah, it does what it says on the tin. So it's just a story about, as they put it in their headline, I'll read out the headline: mask madness is causing Kens and Karens everywhere to beat the crap out of each other. RT is just as much another propaganda medium outlet as the rest of them. There's certain narratives that they like to push, So resorting to stereotypes, they're doing the same as the rest of the media. They're pushing this idea of stereotypes so that everybody can be putting each other into boxes and go, oh, I hate Karens. Whenever I encounter a Karen, I always have to fight them because they're Karens. Where's your context for those people, those individuals? Yeah, unfortunately, stereotypes are a real thing because, unfortunately, many of us fit into a selection of stereotypes. But reality is every individual is an individual, and there is nuance and context to everybody's lives. That means doing this kind of derogatory stereotype programming is not helping in any way at all. This is just giving exactly the game field that they want of like, oh, are you a Ken or are you a Karen? Is the Karen the ones that wants everybody to be half-faced, and the Ken is the one that wants everybody to be barefaced? What are you saying here with this? But it is just that, like I say, RT just reporting the same old shit as a lot of the other papers are carrying. They want people to see this perception of there is a divide. You're either on for masks or against masks. You've got to choose a side and you've got to attack each other. Right, I did see this video clip as well of the woman pepper spraying to a couple who was just sat at a picnic bench. The couple was nowhere near her. It's in a like little picnic area and dog park, I think, in America. The couple's nowhere near her, but she decides to come over and spray them in the face because they're not wearing masks. That is if these things are real, because we mustn't, forget to include that possibility. These things could be staged deliberately to create a media narrative to suit exactly what I'm describing, to give people the impression that there's two sides that are fighting each other. But having met quite a few different people in my life, I think I can say it's an unfortunate truth that you will encounter people who do succumb to this kind of mind virus bullshit. They will self-police and they will police each other, and they will try and get in your face and use emotional manipulation against you and try to use what are philosophical fallacies, but we've all been in a standard education anyway. We've all been stuffed full of that kind of bad thinking practices. But they'll try to claim that, they know that you should be doing this, that, or the other. Whereas what they're actually saying is, I heard a so-called expert, a talking head on the TV, tell me that I should be doing this. So I'm going to repeat it to you because I'm carrying that badge of authority symbolically in my mind. So I'm trying to enforce an external authority on you just because I feel that I have to obey what the talking head said to me, because I've been indoctrinated to just obey what a suggested authority figure says. Bill Gates is not medically trained in any or qualified in any way whatsoever. Yet he's been paraded on places like the BBC constantly saying, well, we've got to have a vaccine until everybody's got a vaccine. It's not going to be safe to go out. Reaching up, pull down that divine truth, supposedly. It's divine bullshit. But yeah, that's the sort of narrative that's gaining ground, the snowball building up slightly of the people who want to obey the suggestions of authority and to wear the mask and make themselves half-faced, and those who don't want to, for whatever their reasons, various reasons. I'm sort of in a strange, I was going to say lucky position, but it's not exactly lucky with all this shit that they're trying to pull. But for me, it's beneficial in a way because I have a medical exemption according to their own bullshit rules. So I can quite easily deflect any demands or requests that I have to cover myself up and stuff like that. So that gives me a little bit of an advantage in standing against this bullshit. But even if I didn't have some kind of medical reason to claim an exemption, I'd still want to do the same thing. I'd still want to say, no, I'm not going along with your bullshit. Fuck off. So I am a barefaced radio host, barefaced radio host. But that situation is potentially going to be primarily based on financial pressure and can't think of a word to encapsulate it all. The employees or the workforce environment, that's going to add another angle of pressure into conformity with the mask requirement. Thanks to Taz for sharing this link. This is on the UK's government petition.parliament.uk. A petition to repeal the decision to implement compulsory face coverings in English shops. I'm not sure why he specifically said just shops, but maybe they're hoping that by approaching it on a specific point, they'll get more kind of legal leverage on it or something. But it only needs 10,000 and it has to get a response from the government, but it needs 100,000 to be considered for debate in Parliament. So 100,000 isn't necessarily going to guarantee that they will debate it. They still get to choose whether they just ignore it or whatever. But if you are still inclined to put any hope or credence into the governmental system, you might want to sign that petition and see, hopefully maybe something will happen. And to mention as well, the protests. There was a little protest in London. I'm not going to bother playing through the video. There wasn't really much in it. It's somewhat framed in a similar fashion to the other mainstream media that have been covering other protests in other parts of the world, where they try to label the protesters as being either right-wing or tinfoil hat conspiracy crazy people or neo-Nazis or anything that is derogatory or bad in their opinion. So if you go out and protest for Antifa or for Black Lives Matter or for transgender rights or for any of the left of the spectrum, that's okay. But if you want to go and join in any protests or activism to do with the right of the spectrum, that currently is not allowed. Or it is frowned upon, and therefore it will get bad press deliberately to try and steer the public. And as again, self-referencing, as I've talked about for years now, what leads to the rise of the right, of the dreaded Nazis and the fascism and all the jackbooted marching and all that kind of, what leads to that? The road to that is the far left. So they keep building this narrative of the political power is being dominated by the far left, and Antifa is okay, they can go out and protest. Anything that's left-leaning ideology is allowed. That way, they build up a deadly threat, a majority collective threat that means people start gravitating to the right. So inevitably, the threat of communism leads to the rise of fascism. And that's taking it from their political spectrum theatre, because the reality is tyranny is tyranny. It can disguise itself as communism or fascism. It will use whatever tools and methodologies it chooses to, as long as it enforces its tyranny. So you follow that spectrum from one side to the other. Eventually, those two ends, those two polarizations meet at tyranny. Communism, extreme communism is tyranny. Extreme fascism is tyranny. Both of them use force of physical violence and incarceration to enforce their tyranny. So they're the same. They are at their core, and their way of ruling the world, they are the same. They just use different methods to achieve the same goal. But the system is perfectly playing this divide and conquer game again now. It's under the guise of, do you wear a mask or do you not wear a mask? Are you one of those anti-maskers? It's a bit like anti-vaxxer. If you have any questions to do with vaccinations, now you're an anti-vaxxer, and you will get stomped down in the media, and you will get that kind of Ken and Karen stereotype reaction from a lot of people if you bring up any questions to do with vaccinations. They resort to the usual go-to response of, oh, I heard such and such authority say this, so therefore you're a bad person who wants to kill babies and old people. Yes. Anyway, I'll keep going through my links. So I'm not going to share a link for this because it was just a little clip off RT again, just to mention the fact that there was a protest in London. But the main thing was the protest in Germany, which I'm not sure if I've got a link open for that. No, I haven't kept a link open for that, sorry. The one link that I found when I went back to check it today had been taken down. So I don't know if that channel had just the video blocked or if the whole channel had been shut down. But I did see a few. Kafka Winston World, Carol, on her channel, she's got some clips from the Germany protest march. And a lot of the media are trying to claim that there were a few thousand, but you can see just from the video footage, there was multiple thousands there. Some estimates put it at nearly 1 million, some claiming more than 1 million people taking part in that protest. And it was a complete mixture of people. Again, even though the media wants to label people as far right or crazy conspiracy tinfoil, whatever, it was a mixture of people that were at those events. Oh, did you want to say something? Go. Yeah. I'll come back in a sec. Sorry, I'm just trying to finish up where I was going with this.
Oh, picture of Jonathan.
Oh, hang on. Yeah, I got you. There you go. Berlin protests against coronavirus rules divide German leaders. That's in The Guardian. So they are covering it a bit, but they're trying to just purely politicize it rather than it being about the global scam and the global, I called it the sale of the century or millennium a few weeks ago. See, they're saying tens of thousands, but some of the video clips I saw, and it was easily, there was over 100,000 just in the one video clip. You know, and that was looking a long view down a main kind of avenue road. And you could see literally, you know, there was a lot of people there, easily more than 100,000. And that was just one angle. It wasn't covering like all, you know, the way it works at protests. You have all those sort of kind of like side bits sort of filtering into that main road. So organisers say up to 1.3 million. Yeah. I'm not sure I'd say that many. I didn't see enough footage to say that, but certainly well over 100, probably a few 100,000 people just in the video clips I saw going around online. So these protests are not fringe. They're not a handful of crazy conspiracy people off the internet who, you know, doom, the end of the world is nigh because you put a mask on. This is now really starting to hit home with a lot of the general populace. As more and more people are either being made destitute or they're losing their jobs or they're being put into financial hardship because they're being threatened with fines or they have been fined for not wearing a mask or for standing too close to somebody and all this kind of bullshit. This is what I mentioned earlier when I showed the petition page. The governments themselves do not necessarily have to mandate certain things to occur. They simply put pressure on the private sectors, and the private sectors will then create the mandates. So it will seem like it's voluntary, and for many people, like in a work kind of situation, if your employer turns around and says, look, from now on you have to do this, and this, you know, you have to wear a mask, wear gloves, wear face shields, wear a paper suit, wear a hat, you know, whatever it is, or you're going to be sacked. Because the employer has been told that if they don't carry out the suggested guidelines, they themselves will face prosecution. And this is something that has started to come up more and more now. I think it was in Australia where they was talking about, they were threatening employers with 20 years imprisonment if somebody in their workplace caught the illness and died, they're going to hold the employer responsible for not enforcing the safety guidelines. So therefore, the government doesn't have to say, we are mandating that you follow these rules XYZ. We're not creating a new legislation or law to say you have to follow XYZ. We're just telling the employers that if they don't follow the guidelines, we'll prosecute them. So guaranteed the private sector will create the mandates. And this is the tip of the spear in terms of a lot of the shops that are mandating certain requirements, such as the wearing of a face covering. They've been somewhat lenient in the UK. A lot of the, let me just swap back to, hang on, drop that one, swap back to sharing my other screen. They have been somewhat lenient in the UK. A lot of the different supermarket branches and shops have said that they won't enforce it. They will ask people to wear a mask, but if people choose not to, then the staff won't try and enforce it. They won't stop them shopping. They won't try and kick them out or anything. At least that's what it's saying on their HQ websites, you know, like Aldi and the Co-op and Asda and, you know, the big supermarket chains. They're saying that they will ask customers politely, will you please wear a mask? And if the customer says no, then the staff are told to just let them be and just report it to management. And then the management can decide if they're going to phone the police and turn it into some bullshit. But so far, they've been somewhat lenient in that kind of respect. Yet, here we are again, where the mandating doesn't need to come from government. They don't need to create a piece of legislation or a law or anything like that. They're just guidelines that have been suggested to employers. And thanks to Gary for this link. He mentioned it before we started, and I said, yes, please, that will, hang on, I'll put this link in the side chat. That will be very appropriate to what I was talking about. Copy, paste, do more quicker. This is a Nottinghamshire Live sort of local news page. Bird's bakery manager sacked for taking cash payments and using her card to pay instead, because Bird's bakery had decided that they're not taking cash. This is sort of like, you know, to summarize the article, they're not taking cash, they only take card payments. So this woman who works there and had worked there for how many years? 44 years. A woman in her 60s who's been working there for 44 years, 25 years of which as a manager, was sacked because when primarily elderly customers came in with cash in their hands and wanted to buy, I don't know, a loaf of bread or whatever, she decided, well, they're already at the till, they've already touched the goods, so therefore the goods can't go back on the shelf. They've only got cash. So I'll get them to give me the cash, which she says she got them to put it straight into her purse, so nobody was touching it. And then she paid for the goods with her card. So basically, she just acted as a go-between for that electronic card payment requirement that the management wanted her to do. And the customers still got the goods that they wanted, and the business was sustained through the trade of those goods. So the fact that customers wanted to buy their goods has kept them in business. But because of this pedantic rule, which they claim is because cash is dirty. Where is it? I did highlight that somewhere. Yeah, there it is. Only use debit cards because notes and coins are not clean. There is no scientific proof for this. The UK government has not withdrawn cash from circulation because it's not clean. If notes and coins were not clean, they would have removed them from circulation. They would have banned using it, but they haven't. And there is no scientific proof to show that this claim is true. The debit cards themselves are handled just as much as people handle notes or coins. So the debit card itself is covered in just as much germs as the notes and coins. So this is nothing to do with protecting people from any potential infection. This is just to do with forcing people to use electronic payments. And this woman, who had been a worker at that place for 44 years and wanted to keep the customers coming in because she had, that kind of work ethic of these businesses don't exist without the customers. So the customer is king. Customer wants to buy your goods. They've only got cash to pay. You take the cash. It is illegal to refuse legal tender. Any of those customers, if they had the goods in their hand, would be in their legal right to put the money on the counter and walk out the door. No matter what the owner behind the counter says, he could say, no, I don't want your cash. I don't. You leave the cash on the counter and you walk out the door with the goods. You've paid for it, so you're breaking no laws. You're doing nothing illegal. So that is, just an example of how the private sector will be used to create the illusion of things being mandatory, because the society around you will not operate other than if you follow these rules, such as wearing a mask, paying by electronic payment, etc. The government itself doesn't need to make it mandatory. So again, symbolic. It's a symbolic imagery of what to be afraid of, just like the mask itself. The mask, provably, because I feel confident there's more than enough studies and research papers and evidence out there to say provably the mask shows no beneficial ability to protect you from this alleged virus that they claim is doing the rounds. So the only reason they were requiring you or suggesting to the private sector that they tell you are required to wear the mask is symbolic, to make it look like you're obeying the rules, to make it look like you have absorbed the mind virus that they have been spreading through the media propaganda. And I know, as I've mentioned multiple times before, it's just sort of a caveat to put in there, I know from many people they're doing it, they're wearing the mask because they don't want to get fined or they don't want to lose their job. They're putting a financial pressure upon people to force them to conform. But at some point, as the economy crashes, within the last few months, we have supposedly, the major economies have gone down 30+% within the last few months. In the Great Depression, which lasted years, it took years for that 30% drop to happen. Whereas now, within the space of a quarter of a year, within approximately a 3-month period, thanks to the locking down and the shutting down of businesses, etc., nearly every country's economy has dropped by over a third, over 30%, which means we are on the rapid descent of the roller coaster ride into a recession, depression that is going to be massive compared to the so-called Great Depression of the 30s. So placating this fear of being financially pressured, at what point is your job going to become non-existent anyway? I know this is maybe almost jumping the gun a little bit because people want to keep working for as long as they can. You're going to need that money to do various things with. But at some point, this is potentially going to hit a lot of people like running into a brick wall. The financial pressure they're using on you at the moment is just appropriate at the moment. In the coming months and next year to 2 years, it's going to become somewhat meaningless as all the economies nosedive and massive amounts of businesses are going to go under. So there's going to be more and more and more people unemployed. So then what does the financial pressure do? Nothing. Because if you've got nothing, because you've been made destitute by this bullshit, then you've got nothing to lose. So them saying you're going to get fined for not wearing a mask, you say, fine me for what, mate? I've got nothing. And that's when they're going to get to the stage of threatening incarceration or quarantine camps, which, is a disgusting euphemism for some of the stuff that's already occurring in other parts of the world, like China, the re-education camps. That's been back in the news a little bit recently. Funny that, part of them painting the China narrative of, they're the bad guys, we'll go and fight them soon. But anyway, I should hurry up and get on with where I was. Back to the symbolic mask and the divide and conquer effect. We're getting to the stage now where a lot of the things we've been talking about for the past several months are now happening, which for me means I feel a little bit like I'm in kind of like observer mode. I'm waiting for the majority of people to sort of catch up of like, well, actually, he said that kind of thing could happen, and here it is. And I've found over the years that for a lot of people, when you try to communicate some of this evidence and information to them, especially when you start trying to explain highly complex and far-reaching things such as Agenda 21, Agenda 2030, the psychological manipulation of people en masse via mass media, things like that, they tend to get a bit dismissive, and they don't believe or accept a lot of what you say because it requires a fair amount of information for them to work their way through before they start to see what you're pointing at. You need to put a lot of dots in front of them to draw the picture before they can really see it. But one method that I found works fairly well most of the time, depends how accurate you are really more than anything, is simply to predict what's going to happen in the near future. The further out you try to predict, the further ahead into the future you try to predict, the less likely of you being accurate. Because the further in time you go, the more possible variabilities that occur. So therefore the potentials of what you're talking about become bigger and bigger, or smaller and smaller, really. The percentage probabilities of things happening get smaller and smaller. But if you can predict things that are going to happen within the next few weeks, the next few months, maybe a year ahead, certainly for things like the economy, you can do that. There's lots of people that do that kind of thing, trends prediction and stuff like that. But in terms of trying to show or present some of these ideas to the general public such that they start to at least get somewhat of a grasp of the interconnected enormity of this world agenda, because it is a global agenda. If you can suggest things to them, you just plant a seed about like, in the coming months, they're probably going to suggest things like X, Y, Z. And when those things occur, they'll suddenly look back at you as if like you're a prophet of the future. And you're not being a prophet in any way whatsoever. This is not, well, not for me anyway, talking about this kind of stuff. I know there's some people out there that are mediums and stuff like that, precognition and whatever, but I'm talking about the general sort of, skeptic and conspiracy theorist that talks about things that the government are doing and whatever. If you can predict just a month ahead, and then the things you've been talking about start to actually happen, then people tend to come back to you and go, actually, what you said, it turned out to be real. It actually happened. I saw it. So, tell me a bit more. Because people do, for most people anyway, they do learn through experience. I know we don't always learn from our mistakes and whatever, but to generalize the way we absorb information and learn, accumulate knowledge epistemologically, is through experience and repetition, which is why, the mental manipulation that the system relies on uses a lot of emotional and repetitive angles to actually, insert stuff into people and then reinforce it and reinforce it and reinforce it. But the ability to demonstrate that you can somehow seemingly magically predict the future, it connects with a lot of people because they see it actually happening in front of them. It's like if you say something like, in the next few months, they're probably, well, I'd say in approximately 1 month, around September, Bojo's going to start announcing that there has been a spike, that the second wave is really starting to hit. They've introduced it recently here in the UK with the announcements of the localized lockdowns around Manchester and other places. There's a few places in the north. London hates the north. But there's a few places where they're reinitiating the lockdown. They're cancelling the easing of the lockdown. They're saying families can't get together and certain workplaces have got to be shut down because they can't enforce the distancing and blah, 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 blah. So they're already getting ready, because once we've gone through August and get into September, that means really the summer is coming to an end. August is the month of harvesting. This is where they're going to start accumulating their claims and justifications so that in September they can start 9/11. They can start talking about how the second wave is beginning. Look, we got all these spikes again. You naughty people, you're all covidiots. You haven't been doing what we told you, and now it's all going to start getting worse. Whoa. Let's just see. Give it about a month, and I'll try and remember to mention this again and see if that starts happening. Maybe, you could say as a gambling man that I'm just sort of hedging my bets a bit by picking on something that is pretty likely to happen already anyway. You're certainly not going to get good odds on a prediction like that, yeah? But it's just a general observation to demonstrate how if you can point things out to people that you feel confident are going to end up coming down the pipe because of the movements that the system is making at the moment, then when those things start to occur, people tend to be more willing to listen to the rest of the stuff you've got to say. So Socratic method is a really good teaching tool, but also giving people little things of like, in the near future, this kind of thing is going to happen. You just wait and see.
Screen share. I've got a good example of what you're saying.
One second.
Yeah?
Oh, good,
Vernon Coleman, yeah, he mentioned this the other day. Let's scroll down and see what happens if you don't have this app. You get a $55,000 or 3 years in prison for not having the app. And Vernon Coleman was saying on his show that there are people who don't have the right phone, and they were scared to go out of their house. Yeah, and just show people that. I mean, you show them pictures of China and they say, "Oh, that could never happen here." All the social control, social regulation. Oh, that could never happen here. That's like a Black Mirror episode. And this is Qatar, yeah.
Yeah.
So
it's also fairly well built electronic infrastructure. They've got a lot of high tech infrastructure there, so they're set up to have this enacted quite well. They've got a good internet setup there. They've got good service kind of things.
Well, despite that, everybody has been coming out against it. Even the World Health Organization said, they tried it back in the day with Ebola and it doesn't work. And even the GPS, it can only measure you to 6 feet, so they can't really tell. If they try to measure the average person who they've been in contact with, it would just explode the number of people that have been in contact with somebody who might have picked it up yesterday in the pub. Or I think this is part of the reason why they blame these pub gatherings on the COVID testing. Yeah, they test one person in there and then they go and test the rest, and they had it 3 years ago, so they test positive. And
I do think that the track and trace stuff is just a stopgap. It's not going to, under that kind of labeling and those kind of claims of, we need to trace the people that have been in contact with an infectious person, that cover story is going to fade out fairly quickly. Because really the track and trace, again, it's nothing to do with actually being capable of tracing infectious people so that they could monitor or even control the spread of an illness. It's about just tracing people and their movements and their access to information and their contacts, etc. It's a surveillance state tool. So I think the kind of cover story like that is going to it's going to wear out quickly. Because, like I think we mentioned it the other week, the way they were doing it here in the UK, they were saying they were going to go up to 14 people connected to the suspected person, which means, they didn't say this, but to me, looking at it, that means, by 6 degrees of separation, basically that incriminates everyone. Because you can guarantee that you're connected to everyone else in the country if they're going to go 14 steps. Yeah.
Yeah. Here, the World Health Organization is saying there is only anecdotal evidence that these things are effective, adding they should not replace manual contact tracing. That's the knock on the door, basically.
Yeah,
and then they can evaluate you. Who's actually living in the house and what kind of work do you have, and should we put you down as positive anyway because we can really fuck your life up, or do you have a necessary job and we'll not interfere with you? That's basically it. Yeah.
Sir, can you kindly justify your existence?
Exactly. I mean, that's what they were saying. Like people like bloody Bernard Shaw, and they've been saying it again recently. They've been pushing that again recently, yeah. And that is what they want to do, yeah. So when you send your test off, Jesus Christ, don't have that test, yeah, because if they know your name and who they are, they'll go through your Facebook and all the rest of it, and boom, you'll be positive, whether you are or not, and they'll just take. Yeah.
If the so-called mistakes or what's the word for it? Just incompetence is continued in relation to the keeping of data to do with somebody that's been tested positive, so that, in other words, they can never be cured. Once you get a positive test, you could live another 2 years, get run over a bus, and they'll still put COVID-19 on your death certificate. Yeah. That somewhat broached a few weeks ago when there was that statistician made his report saying, a lot of the deaths that are being recorded are people that were cured. They weren't ill anymore. They died of some other reason after the fact. But because their name was never removed from the positive COVID test, then doesn't matter what they died of later, they're still getting COVID written on their death certificate and they're still appearing in the death count. That means that's going to potentially escalate the amount of people that are just automatically put onto that list. Because I don't know, I mentioned this the other week as well, because the tests they're using give such a high positive result or false positive result, because they're not actually truly isolating the claimed SARS-CoV-2, then that means basically everyone's being put on the list. So what they're really after with the track and tracing is, like you say, just your name, your details. Whether you've tested positive or not doesn't necessarily really matter. They just want you in the listing. Yeah. As soon as they can get a positive result on you, all the better for them, because now you've automatically become an infinite number to be counted into the death count. And by infinite, I mean, you never get removed. You just keep getting added every time they do the death count.
Yeah, I don't have long, but what I wanted to mention, I try to share this with Polly, amazing Polly, and Jeff C. Epstein's girlfriend has sued Ghislaine for defamation. This is her, Shelley Lewis. She was Epstein's girlfriend from 1999 till about 2002. She's now the founder and host of Equanimity Expert. Right? She's got a YouTube channel, and she's like waltzing through New York, half dressed like a supermodel, offering a service of taking people out of the city for a week and teaching them how to meditate and find grace in this wide world, etc., etc. And she's a part of this Neo Way Broad Lights org. This was on 26th of July, and they was having a big world conference. And this new age spirituality that they're bringing in, which is all cod bullshit, like Eckhart Tolle, yeah? Because I was watching another video of his the other day. Even though I banned his fucking channel, I still get his bloody videos recommended. So I tried him again, right? And he's telling me about consciousness, yeah? And I tell you what, I've watched him, and in the first 30 seconds, he's blinking at the camera, and my eyes began. I wanted to scratch just watching the guy and listening to him. Now that is something fucking wrong. My radar was going, no, this guy. There is something deeply bad about this guy. So I thought, what is it? Keep watching. And he's got all the spirituality keywords, but every now and again he comes out with a phrase like, "There is nothing we can do." And then he's saying, oh, people who are in the ego are this, and people who are in the ego are that. And like Jesus on the cross, we must forgive them. They know not what they do. You know, and he puts these little phrases into the fucking public as they're watching. And they all think they're being very spiritual and all the rest of it. But he's actually fucking isolating them even more. I mean, he looks like a fucking gremlin or a demon. You know, he looks like somebody who came through the fire so fucking hot that he fucking burnt his face in the new body after reincarnation.
Saying that, let me just mention
But anyway,
I haven't got a clip of his face, but the guy in Australia who announced the curfew, because when you said he looks like a gremlin, I thought, yeah, I can think of a few of them that look like fucking gremlins, including that guy in Australia. You know, because now they have a curfew in Melbourne. You know, again, things we talked about in recent months. You know, this is no longer anything to do with quarantine, because are you telling me that the disease only comes out after 8 p.m. in Melbourne? So that everybody has to be indoors by 8 p.m., the curfew time, yeah? 8 p.m. to 5 a.m., I think he said.
But
So
you know,
the virus only ever comes out after 8 p.m. This is nothing to do with the virus. This is to do with controlling the population.
no,
It's got to the stage where they're initiating. That's full-on martial law. If they give you a curfew and they're going to either prosecute you, fine you, or incarcerate you if you break that curfew, that is martial law.
It's clever the way they've done it, though, because Australia is now in its winter, and the winter-summer death rises goes up and down. So if it was real, you would expect more now to be coming out in Australia. But then it's not that cold, is it, compared with UK? I don't know what the yearly sort of death totals are in Australia, but you know, it's pretty hot summer and winter. So
it seems each country has its own agenda, doesn't it, to carry out whatever they feel they want to do. I mean, this political lobbying thing you mentioned before, and also in the chat, Greer was saying as well, you know, anything that causes the argument separation is dark. It's the dark cabal, and they want us separated with every, you know, everything, you know, arguing, fighting, and the political lobbying is just say, you know, there you go. There's no scientific evidence for masks, but the politicians think it's the right thing to do. They want you all covered up, so people can see through that. Let's hope.
Well,
and the protest Saturday was interesting, because again, people are beginning to not just wake up to this, but also the pedo stuff as well. It seems, you know, stuff going on in Hollywood, CNN protests there and that building. So yeah, go on. Sorry, Gary. I know you got to go soon, so I'll let you speak.
The question that people are going to ask is, but how could a conspiracy stretch all across the world? And the simple answer is, have you ever known a politician that wouldn't use any excuse to grab more power?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and they know that if they don't go along with the agenda, all of a sudden they're going to be the strange political party that seems to be now leaning towards the right in all the fucking media across the world and half the media in their own country. You know, they know it's carrot and stick. Yeah, you go against the narrative, or you can pretend it's all real and just grab a bit more power. Like Catalonia now, they're going to get a big loan from the European Union, and Catalonia are going to have their share of that loan and do with it whatever they want.
Just to mention these as well, because there's been a lot of purging on YouTube recently. You know, I'm not sure if it's still there. I know Dean, you uploaded a copy of this. I haven't had the chance to check to see if your copy's still there. But I know a lot of the people who are uploading this video of the doctors in America speaking about hydroxychloroquine.
Yeah.
A lot of the videos have been taken down. Channels have been shut down for hosting this video and shit like that. And there was one in Spain as well. Again, thanks to Kafka
Well, the weird thing is, when I first looked this up, they actually used hydrochloroquine as one of the experimental drugs for giving to the health staff. Yeah, so they were giving some of them some antiviral, they were giving some of them hydrochloroquine, you know, as an experiment to see like how many of them contracted the disease, to see if it was any good at preventing it. It's a treatment, not a preventative kind of thing, isn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. They don't claim it's curative.
But I mean, they was even giving it to people here, the health workers. So, you know, everybody says, oh, it's all bunkum, all bunkum. Well, they used it here
Yeah.
in the hospital service.
I think this demonstrates the sheer financial power of the big pharmaceutical industries, because they want people to want a vaccine, because the vaccine will earn them a hell of a lot more money. They'll be indemnified against any damages. You know, think about that. They wanted to rush out an untested vaccine, and the companies that produce those vaccines are given a liability pass by the governments. Basically, they can't be prosecuted if the vaccines cause damage to people. Yeah, the vaccine courts will pay out damage money instead, but the big pharma industry won't be prosecuted for
There's a
pushing.
fund they set up, isn't there? There's a fund that's got millions, multi-millions of dollars in it for. But they won't report that.
Whereas this stuff, the hydroxychloroquine, is literally pennies. Yeah, to produce each dose is pennies.
6p a dose, I think, something like that.
So this that's the main reason I'm pointing out. This demonstrates how much power the pharmaceutical industries have to shut down this conversation about the use of alternative treatments.
Yeah.
Like I say, I don't think they were claiming that it cured directly on its own. You know, some of them talk about how their patients got better, they were cured, but it wasn't just purely through taking hydroxychloroquine on its own. No, it's in all inclusive care. Yeah.
Yeah. Apparently, someone was saying to me it's been around about 60 odd years, this medicine.
Yeah. It's an original malaria curative based on quinine or
quinine. Yeah, quinine. Don't get the. I mean, made me think of the drinks at Christmas. You know, that company.
Gin and tonic.
Yeah, gin and tonic.
Traditionally had quinine in it.
That's right, but now it adds sweetener in, unfortunately. So you've got to go and find a decent one, because all the ones that were okay to drink back in the day are not anymore.
From what Tazzy mentioned last Wednesday, yes, there are still brands available that have quinine in it. So you just have to check your labels when you're buying it. Right?
It's very bitter, isn't it?
Yeah. This other one as well in Madrid. Just because this adds into the pushback of people protesting, but this is medical professionals holding a conference in Madrid, talking about, just read out these 4 main points that they mentioned. Coronavirus victims did not outnumber last year's seasonal flu deaths. Figures were exaggerating by altering medical protocols. In other words, how they fill out the death certificates, how they do the tests and shit like that. The confinement of the healthy and the forced use of masks have no scientific basis, and the disease known as COVID-19 does not have a single infectious pattern, but a combination of them. So, this kind of pushback is building up. And the last thing I wanted to mention was to give a shout out to Annie Logical. I think I've mentioned pretty much most of what I had in my notes. There's a couple of bits, but she put together, this is old school. And what I was saying right at the beginning about how at some point an underground railroad will emerge organically, because it's just the natural process of things. This is old school. The more they shut us down on the internet, the more they curtail things like people being able to share links online and stuff like that, or even just mention certain words. Now you get shadow banned for using the wrong phrase and whatever. At some point, you will go back to the old school style of doing things, which is things like Annie's done here, where this is a PDF you can download and then you just print it out, and it's a well put together list. 2 pages, like the idea being you print it double-sided, Yeah, but 2 pages with several points that cover a lot of the things, that we've all been talking about for the past few months about how this scamdemic is manipulated and where potentially it's leading to, such as the mandatory vaccines and smart agenda. And please remember, although I'm saying mandatory vaccines, as I explained earlier, it doesn't necessarily mean the government will create a mandate to do it. They'll just create the environment such that it forces people into a situation of having to have it. And there's obviously links there if you want to check it out. If I haven't put this in the chat, we'll do that right now. But just because things are getting curtailed online, don't get despondent. Don't get ground down by the fact that they're shadow banning you. They're censoring your content, or they're deleting whole channels like they did. Who was the latest one that went the other day? Del Bigtree, Highwire, that they constantly label as anti-vaxxer. Like I said earlier, the derogatory term anti-vaxxer.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm doing infinity screens here. But they're going to keep doing that shit, and it's going to get worse. So don't how to put it without sounding like I'm telling people what to do. I said this a while ago. You've got to get past that bereavement stage of thinking that you can resurrect the old world the way it used to be. It's not going to happen. Even if the people manage to deal with these new emerging tyrants and overturn their bullshit narrative and steer a different direction, the fact that what has happened so far will leave lasting scars on every society, either financial scars or psychological scars. That means the future is going to be something different to what we ever had before. So having this kind of romanticized concept of, we just need to get them to change their minds and everything can go back to normal. No, that old world is done. Move on from it. And in saying that, I'm not suggesting a new world order UN agenda like fucking Sasha Stone does this a lot. It just made me think of it because Gary mentioned him earlier. I'm not saying this to say that, you've got to accept the new world because, it's the new normal because the old world's done. What I'm saying is, please don't get stuck. It's a very negative loop to get stuck in, living in the past, trying to relive or resurrect something that's gone. It's dead. It's gone. Like a bereavement process. Bereave the loss of that friend, relative, whatever it is that's caused you the bereavement, and then move on. We cannot go back to the way things used to be, even if we defeat their agenda. Say we defeat, whatever. Even if we defeat their agenda, the world is different now. They've managed to get away with this much this far, which means the world is forever changed from this point forward. I'm optimistic that in the not too distant future, we're going to have a generation of people who turn around to each other and say, hey, do you remember all that craziness they had in the early 2000s and 2020? And weren't they living really freaky, crazy shit back then? I'm glad we sorted that shit out and we're not having all that bullshit now. Yeah. But don't drive yourself into a madness trying to resurrect something that's gone. It's never going to go back to exactly the way it was before all this bullshit. Think about how you would rather it be in the future. Like the classic quote, be the change you want to see. Think about what is that change that you want to see and concentrate on that rather than looking backwards and think, if only we could get back to like what it was like in the 70s, what it was like in the whatever, pick your favorite decade. Mine was simply the 70s because I was still a young kid then. And when you're a young kid, you ain't exactly got a lot of woodies, have you? Life's fun and exciting and everything. So
I think we have a chance. We have a chance to change it for the better and to put better systems in place that work and that are honest and honourable. And people who are there to administer rather than govern and rule over you. Like again, that's a mind thing. You know, we've got to get over that and work on ourselves and see that for what it is.
I was thinking,
yeah.
I was thinking about it over the last few days as being similar to the germ theory versus terrain theory. I know, you know, we sort of talked about this subject a little bit over the past few months because of how it's relevant to the claims about there being a virus in the first place and how do they deal with viruses and all that kind of shit, you know, to do with vaccines and everything. But the one thing that occurred to me is, well, a couple of things that occurred to me. I might have mentioned this before, but it's a classic divide and conquer dichotomy argument again. They want you to choose one side or the other. You're either for germ theory or you're for terrain theory, and you're going to fight the other side. You know, you're going to claim that the other side's crazy beliefs are the reason that everything's going wrong in the world. And the reality is more likely that it's a mixture of both. It's almost, in nature, it's almost never either or. The answer is almost never either or. It's usually both and. And nature doesn't work in separate, isolated vacuums. Everything is a duality that is in a constant motion with itself. Yeah. The singularity is made of a duality that is in a constant dance, like the yin yang symbol demonstrates. But that can be applied to germ theory versus terrain theory. And then I thought about it from the point of view of the mind virus. And I know I mentioned this a few times recently. You know, a lot of what is going on is a mind virus. What we are really concerned about is not a virus that gives you a flu-like illness. No, it's a mind virus that gives you the perception of being under constant threat and in constant danger, and that everyone around you is deadly. Yeah, is a mortal threat to you. And that made me think again about germ theory versus terrain theory. Are we talking about, is the real potency of this based on the meme of the mind virus that's been injected into people, similar to a germ in germ theory? Yeah, you know, you've got the fear virus. You know, I remember I did the show called the fear vaccine or something. I was talking about that kind of idea. Or is it because we're in an environment where we've been surrounded and saturated by projections of fear? Yeah, and this was in my head while I was away camping in the field, and I was thinking about, you know, what is it about going out into nature? And I've talked a few times in the past about how nature is like a washing machine. You know, you can take your troubles into nature. You spend a bit of time in the outdoors, enjoying the wherever you are, the countryside, by the river, by the coast, up on a hill, whatever. And it's almost like your concerns, your worries, your woe gets washed away by that environment. And I was speculated about whether it's something to do with the electromagnetic fields, yeah, because in normal urbanized environments, we're surrounded by artificially generated electrical fields. That puts pressure on our own biology and psychology from that biological pressure. So going out into nature, is that acting like that washing machine? Is it the terrain that's causing the fear response? Yeah. But again, back to the point of it's not either or, it's both and. They've given people this concept, the germ, they planted the germ, the meme virus in their heads of, oh, there's something to be afraid of, folks. And then the terrain is constantly reinforcing that. So if you step out of that terrain for a while, you will get the opportunity to purge yourself of the germ element of the virus. So enjoy being in nature, enjoy being in company with other people. Yeah, don't look at the media for a while. Take a little bit of a break from it. It's in a contradictory fashion. It's become a bit trendy to talk about dopamine fasting. You know, the dopamine you get from the addiction to the social media that is satisfied or fulfilled every time you get a like or a comment or a happy face or whatever, and you take a break from that and you help your own biology reset and your own psychology calm down because you're no longer being overstimulated by too much dopamine input. Terrain theory and germ theory, yeah. Change your terrain.
Yeah.
And Marshall wants to join in and say,
the dog's barking. Yeah, sorry, you can hear him. Yeah.
Change your terrain a little, Yeah, I know, again, it's a bit of a cliche saying to people, find a bit of a balance.
Mm.
I look at this stuff because I'm interested, and it's been an area of interest for me for half my life at least. And I'm somewhat invested in doing this kind of stuff, not for monetary reasons, but really for spiritual reasons is what it comes down to.
Yeah.
So I've got a drive and an interest to look at more of this stuff than most people would ever probably bother to do. Yeah, the average person doesn't look at the sheer number of hours worth of information that I do.
Mm.
But that's my choice. And I've learnt over the years to do that transmutation process of taking the shit that they're giving me and transmuting it and purging it and keeping any of the beneficial information that I can find. It is a little bit like a purgative process of getting rid of the viruses that they're trying to inject into you, psychological, spiritual viruses.
Yeah. Go out and pick some blackberries because they're nearly ready now.
Yeah.
They're not far
Yeah.
off.
And they're good for all your vitamins.
Yeah.
And you'll be, hopefully, if the weather stays good, you'll be out in the sunshine while you're doing it, soaking up some vitamin D and solar rads.
Yeah.
And I know Gary mentioned this last week, I think, elderberries.
Yes. I think they're a bit later though, aren't they? They come out a bit later.
I can't remember. I know he did mention it. I think he might have mentioned it because it's coming up, or it was recently or something. But you'll have to check, please. Please do not rely on me for that kind of what would you call it?
Foraging. Yeah, foraging information. Yeah. Yeah, I'm getting better at it. I mean, because I know a few people now. We know a few people who know, a few things, and when we're out and about, start to identify a few things and little things that you think, you wouldn't think you could eat, but you could, edible, and they're all around you. Yeah, you've got to get one of them books and have a look. But obviously the obvious ones, like obviously blackberries and things, which you can just pick and eat. And yesterday, there was absolutely stacks of them all waiting there's a few had come out, but only a few. So you need to give it maybe another week or two. But yeah.
It's not going to be long until it's mushy season again.
And all that as well, yeah. But that's the time. Go out and get like we did when we mentioned last week. We were away, and just in that environment was great. Just being in the countryside, and just getting away from the madness and there's the same routines that for 5 months. Finally getting away was great.
Dopamine fasting.
Yeah.
Although then again, I think I was getting plenty of dopamine just from enjoying.
Well, I do. I
looking at the view and watching the birds, and
it energizes me, and things like that. Being outside, it's people get too used to being in, but when you really do start to get out more and more and more, and just it's not like we have bad weather. You're just wearing the wrong clothes. Yeah, that's all.
Barefaced.
So so it's that kind of thing. If you go with that kind of attitude, half the time the weather's all right this time of year, most through the spring and summer. And we did have one day of rain, but you manage it, you do what you do. You don't just go, I'm going home now, it's raining. So it's all about, and you get that whole benefit, and then the day changes. It might only rain for 6 hours. I think it's rained for 6 hours, and then the sun comes out for another 5 hours or something this time of year. So you get, all the benefit of the light as well. Charging you up so you can go into winter with a bit more energy, so you're better prepared for the dark.
We are solar powered beings. Just looking at what Dean said, 1,400 feet for 3 hours. That doesn't mean you were like 1,400 feet just up a ladder. But yeah, just I find it exceedingly relaxing and calming.
Yeah.
And curative. Yeah. It's not medical advice, folks, but yeah, just psychologically, maybe it'd be better to say that. Psychologically curative. Spiritually curative.
Yeah.
It's not get all Eckhart Tolle on it.
No, we're not going to go down. Gary's right about him. He's a weirdo, and I think I dived into him for about same as Gary for about 5 seconds and thought, nope. and just moved on. And that was it. That was my Eckhart Tolle experience.
I always got the impression that he was like talking to himself in a mirror.
Yeah.
Because it seemed a lot of what he suggests is to get people to just turn in on themselves, and that's why I get what Goethe's saying, that kind of new age
to trap you
stuff. Yeah,
very new agey.
You end up sort of stuck, turned in on yourself, just looking at yourself in a mirror, basically.
Yeah, and he doesn't talk about anything. Oh, good stuff, co-creation, all the rest of it, co-creators and your energy, and it's not. We can't do anything. We can do lots of things. Where you know.
There's
people like that who come along and go on.
Well, I was going to say, there's just, I think, I'm sure people could have very long philosophical arguments about this, but there's a difference between stoicism and apathy. Well, what he suggests comes across as more like apathy, as in there's nothing you can do about it, so just sit down and just wait. Basically just wait for death.
What Days has put in the chat, learned helplessness. That's the new term for it, isn't it? Like that's what he was talking about, because those videos and things were from quite a while ago, aren't they? His stuff.
Yeah.
It's not just recent.
I first saw him like 2011, 2012, something like that.
So putting that into people.
One of those internet talking heads. But stoicism is not apathetic. If you haven't heard of that, go and look it up. The philosophical school of stoicism, the Stoics. I like a lot of that point of view. There's a few things I disagree with slightly, but that's simply, it gets into philosophical pedantics, basically. But being able to put your face barefaced into the storm and sustain, to endure reality, makes it sound a little bit like you're putting up with it and it's actually quite miserable and you don't really want to, you're only doing it because you have to, but that's not really what it means in the definition, to endure something. It means you can take the blows and you're still standing, and if anything, those the chaotic or the seeming chaotic reality that we share means at some point you're going to get downs as well as ups.
Yeah.
And the Stoic principle is that both are required for life experience. So you have to be able to either stand your ground and take those blows, or get back up when you get knocked down and carry on. Yeah.
It's like we're shit shovelers for the next generation. We're just clearing that path so they make it a bit easier for them to understand things instead of being lied to continually.
Can you hear that, kids? He's telling you, he's building the Babylon fun world for you. The next generation, you're going to be enjoying yourselves, and it's all because we've been shoveling shit for you.
Yeah, pushing all that crap up, and then, as you said before, just walking away, and the whole thing just seems like it's coming down, in a sense, with the pedo stuff again. That hasn't gone away. That's still quite, everybody's on that still and saying, look, this has to, and people are sharing all kinds of stuff around social medias, and it's good to see that people are beginning to shine that light on that dark stuff, because that's what's holding a lot of this together, believe it or not. This is all connected, and these guys are, thinking they can do exactly what they want. It's we push into the top, and as you push to the top, that's it. All reveals, and that's what we're getting this year. A lot of revealing.
2020, the year of vision, the year of the apocalypse, because apocalypse does actually mean reveal. To unveil the hidden.
8 months in, and look what look what they're doing. Look what's happening. It's like, you can't miss it, can you?
Dino just sent me the link for that video. I'm not sure. Did they make you take it off your YouTube video? Then I'm guessing, because the link he's just sent me is for BitChute, which I'll put in the side chat there. It's for that video of the doctors speaking at that presentation. So if you haven't seen it, Dino's got it on his BitChute channel.
Yeah, BitChute's the where to go, really, when things get all like stopped and taken down.
For now,
For now.
This is the thing. It's like tyranny will eventually crack down as much as it can, as far as it can, which means inevitably it's going to get to the stage where no information exchange is allowed. Potentially, it could get that far, So these are just lifeboats that are suitable for now. Yeah, if they push us off one platform, we all move to other platforms. Yeah, and you see this happen for a lot of people on YouTube.
Yeah.
They're not all in one basket anymore. They've got outputs on multiple different platforms because they know this is going to keep happening.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not like they're only going to ban one or two naughty people like Alex Jones or whatever, and then everybody's going to be honky dory again. No, it's control of information.
Yeah.
So as long as there's anyone out there speaking counter to the governmental narrative, then they're under threat of censorship and this kind of control.
Over here, you see, we have the NHS, and they are under a different rule, if you like. Over in the States, there it's a different medical setup, isn't it? It's private, and it looks like that hospital, or a lot of them that work there, have said, "Yeah, come out," and a few maybe get together and know this is bullshit. But over here, if you speak out, it seems you get struck off, as we saw with Dr. Adil and others recently. Speaking out and calling it out for what it is, and being told then to, be quiet, and then suddenly struck off from his own job, from working in NHS for how many years he was there, 30 odd years. Again, similar like the woman in the bakery you mentioned, 44 years, and just going, doing something that's not bad, telling the truth and doing something good. Now you're being punished.
Dr. Rock's just simply, there you go, the perfect meme that demonstrates what I was talking about. Yeah, forced vaccination does not look like this on the left. It's not going to be jackbooted neo-Nazi stormtroopers holding you down and injecting you. It's going to be the private sector, like it says on the right. It's going to be the private sector that manipulates your environment to put you in a position where you just can't live unless you conform to the requirements of having the COVID pass and all that kind of. So, in other words, you are being forced to be vaccinated. But they make it seem like you have a choice, and they make it seem like it's not them that's created the legislation to force it to happen or whatever.
Yeah, do it other methods. Yeah.
Thanks for sharing that. Yeah, this is what we're heading into. And right now, at the moment, and maybe for the past few weeks, you've seen this kind of evidence building up. Yeah, so like I said, like I was talking about earlier, when people may disbelieve the extent of some of the things you're trying to show to them, like, the classic response, "Oh, they'd never do that. That's only in China. They're not doing that here." And so, yeah, maybe we haven't quite got to the stage of re-education camps yet here in the UK, but look at the stepping stones that China did and compare that to what's happening now here.
And you mentioned Qatar as well, 3 years in jail.
Yeah. It's the same dance moves. It's the same kata that they're using. So once you've learned that it is the same, you can see where the footprints are going to land. So it's not rocket science to predict what they're going to do next. Yeah. They don't need to physically forcibly do it, even though just the other day Trump was, making one of his usual fucking, mate, it's like what's the word for it? Sucker punch. Yeah, he's got this technique of delivery where he just casually mentions something, almost like as a throwaway mistake. People think he never really meant to say that. It was just a mistake. He misspoke. But what he'll actually say is a disguised sucker punch, yeah? It's like, "Oh, yeah, our military are going to do it powerfully." And it's like, you fucking what, mate? Yeah, he says it just like it's a throwaway thing. So, "Oh, yeah, the vaccines are coming and our military are going to be there administering it powerfully." And it's like, what? What? What are you describing, man? But it's just sort of slipped in there. You wouldn't expect it. It sort of hits you slightly after the fact. You've heard the statement and then it hits you. It's like, what the fuck is he saying? But I think a lot of that is just a threat. Yeah, as in, if you don't conform, we will eventually resort to bringing the soldiers out to do it. So you're better off doing it the nice way now, aren't you? While we're still just suggesting it. Yeah, and I think it's got to be mentioned as well, is this is all coinciding with the narrative of anyone that's an anti-vaxxer or has questions or speaks against that narrative is now being labelled as not just a bit crazy or a bit wacky or whatever. They are being labelled as dangerously insane, as in a violent schizophrenic or psychopath. That is how they're portraying us in the media. If you're a conspiracy theorist who refuses to wear a mask because you got questions about 9/11, then you're somebody who's actually causing death to people in your society. It is going to get very underhanded and nasty.
Yes,
And
it's
this
already
is why
happening.
more and more we have to, now that, maybe this is just my point of view, I feel anyway, now that the evidence is building up so visually, it's becoming so everyday obvious to a lot of people, because it is literally changing your society around you, and now the denial of it is becoming too much for most people. That means me constantly talking about the conspiracy stuff and trying to, show people all the dots that reveal the pattern of the thread of what they've been doing for however many decades and shit like that. Don't need to do that anymore. And if anything, that still serves the purpose of the system, because in a counterintuitive way, it tacitly gives them power. Because by presenting it in such a way as like, oh, there's these people like Bill Gates, who you think just looks like some weedy little nerd, yet he's got himself into a position where potentially he's going to have an influence on billions of people's lives, and possibly even death. But he's just a little weedy guy. Yeah. That is, trying to sort of point that kind of stuff out now is, in a way, making them seem like they're more powerful than they really are. Because it still comes back down to the fact that the only reason all this shit is going the direction it's going is because people are just going along with it. As Cuomo himself said in New York several weeks ago, oh, if people decided not to follow the guidelines, there's nothing we could do about it.
Yeah.
They know full well they cannot enforce this shit because logistically it's impossible for them to do so. And here in the UK, they've pretty much said the same thing. We're just telling you guidelines, folks. These are just suggestions that are given to us by the best scientists in the country, who always make constant mistakes in their estimated models of death counts. But we still rely on them as a scientific expert, and will suggest these guidelines for you. They're not an order. They're not a legal requirement. They're just suggestions.
Yeah. And the magic works again.
Yeah, it's because people see it as, oh, it's an authority figure, therefore must obey, shut off thinking mind, just do as I'm told. Simon says I must jump.
No. Look, yeah, anyway, I haven't got time to go into the other stuff I was going to say, but yeah, carry on.
It really just resolves back down to that. I think
just knowing yourself and doing the work on yourself and knowing who you are stuff. It's that kind of stuff,
Now it's got to this kind of stage. I don't think we need to keep reiterating certain points that for a lot of reasons can in effect create the perception of power on the part of people like Beelzebub Gates. Whereas really now, it's looking at the things that will happen in an optimistic and organic sense. Things like I mentioned, the Underground Railroad, I don't know how many times over the years. Now we're starting to see that happen. We're starting to see how, when it comes down to it, people just get on with shit. The internet is a great technology. It's a very useful tool for us to make use of. But when it comes down to it, if need requires, we'll get a bit of paper and we'll print shit out, or we'll even just write it. Yeah, and we'll use that to share information with each other. They can keep their fucking internet if that's what they're going to do. Yeah,
and this is the same. I was going to mention Bill Gates. This is the same Bill Gates who visited Epstein's island many times and described it as very intriguing. Yeah, well,
Yeah.
say no more. So you're going to believe somebody like him. And it was good, that clip we played a few weeks ago with that. I can't remember where that came from, that interviewer who was interviewing some guy, I don't know who he was, some either businessman or important guy, whatever, said that, he would never trust him or anything. Why would he? Because he's a paedophile. Why would he trust a paedophile? Call him out for what he is. Yeah, it's like, why would you trust him? He went to that island, and we all know what happened at that island, and probably worse, which we haven't found out yet. But yeah,
there's a bit of I don't know, maybe it's just sort of like a reactive thinking process, but oh man, sorry, that made me diverge then into thinking, yeah, maybe it's something to do with the destination and not the journey. And it's a classic mistake that most people make, including on the question of life itself. It's not about the destination, it's about the journey. And I know for many people they think that's just a cheesy cliche, but it's not. When you really analyse it and think about it and think about your own life and experiences, it is about the journey, not the destination. We're all going to the same destination.
yeah.
Yeah? So it's about the journey you take to get there. And in the same manner with people like that, yeah, it just made me think, so why is it that everybody fixates about the people who visited the island? The island was the destination. Yes, potentially, as far as I've heard anyway, bad things happen there. But please don't forget that the plane he used to fly people there was a specifically chosen, for various reasons, model of plane that had been converted to basically be used, the equivalent of like what we have now, what they call a party bus. Yeah, but it was a party bus in the air. There were beds in there. So it's not just about whether they went to the island or not. Bill Gates may be able to turn around and say, oh, well, I never went to the island. Did you go on the flights? Did you go on the Lolita Express? Then you could have been raping kids on the plane in the air. It doesn't have to be the destination that you went to. Just the fact that you in the network of that guy, Epstein,
Yeah.
kill himself, you are tied into all that bullshit. And I don't buy the usual kind of excuses. I think he himself said this. It's like, oh, it was just a network of people. I didn't really know him. I didn't really like it. It's just business.
Well, that information's coming out now, isn't it? Or being released, or bits have been. I mean,
blood.
Yeah, and
that's what they do.
Alan Dershowitz, is it? He's been, 86 times he went there. He said he only went for an odd occasion.
So. Alan Dershowitz, who tries to defend the argument that the age of consent should be lowered to something like 14. Yeah, I know it is that low in some countries, but even so, he ain't exactly got a moral standpoint to talk from.
Yeah. And the other guy who funds it all, like the head of the snake, Les Wexner, that guy, he's, look into him.
Yeah. Don't do it for too long, though. So looking into the abyss, it might drive you crazy.
Yeah.
So the same about most of them. Yeah. It's certainly valuable information and in context, to find out about these people and their history, their life history and whatever. Check out Really Graceful did some good videos on Bill Gates and his family connections and stuff like that. As well as Corbett's 4-part series about Bill Gates. That is excellent. That's certainly worth checking out. I'd say 4-part series. You can watch it all in one go as well if you want to.
There's loads of good info out there. Loads of people have done a lot of good research and put good documentaries together, like you say. And there's most people listening to this have probably seen most of them, but if you haven't, go and check them out. But certainly put together well.
Please keep that in mind. The more you look into these people, the darker it gets, and that can drag you down with it. Especially when you start looking at subjects like that. When you really start pulling the covers off all that shit, it does get really unpleasant, and that can, like what I was talking about earlier. The German terrain theory. If you surround yourself with just that information, it will leave a taint in you. It will pollute you. So you need to either take a break from it or balance it with other stuff. Don't just be obsessing on that, because it will drive you crazy. especially when you start to see how this has been going on for literally hundreds of years and it never
Thousands.
really gets resolved.
Mm.
We just
Thousands.
play this historical chase game where they let us know about one of these people and then, oh, lo and behold, they're dead and there's nothing you can do about it, folks. There's no such thing as institutionalized paedophilia. No, it's all just crazy people on the internet.
Yeah. And put them all in with the vaccine people and everything. Anti-vaxxers. It's all, they just want to
Put 'em
call you all
on the-
nuts for everything you say. So
Put them all on the vaccine trial. Make
Yeah.
Bill Gates do a trial for every single vaccine that's being developed, especially the RNA one. I
Yeah.
want to see him turn into a gibbering blob like on The Fly. Remember that movie, The Fly? I think it's
Yeah.
in Fly number 2, where
Yeah.
the bad guy gets turned into just like this amorphous blob that they keep in a cage. Yeah, that's Bill Gates, hopefully, in the future. Anyway, I think I've pretty much
We're nearly there. Yeah.
I've rattled my chains what I was going to talk about. Hopefully, it made a bit of sense talking about the barefaced radio and how, although I think there's value in using that kind of symbolism and concept of the barefaced man, please, if you're a woman, don't take offense at me saying man or mankind. It's not genderist. It includes women as well. That's why it's man. Yeah. But anyway, that barefaced man facing the reality, even if it's a storm. Just like a good sailor, you're going to get hit by the wind and the weather and the rain, but you're there, you're doing it, yeah? Rather than the half face hiding kind of symbolism, the acquiescence, the doffing of the cap to the authority figure of, yes, I obey, therefore I wear the muzzle. No, don't let them manipulate you with that shit.
But not in the pub.
Yeah, it's magic virus, don't you know? It only works on people that are in non-sit-down restaurants like takeaways. Then it can get you. But if you sit down to eat, then magically it go, oh, I can't get them. He's sitting down. Oh no, I can't have him. Just like in Australia, it knows when 8 p.m. happens, and it comes out to get people. Yeah, that's why they all have to be indoors after 8 p.m. It's magic, this virus, I tell you. Yeah. Anyway, thanks for listening, folks, and we will see you again soon. We'll be back on Wednesday night on the Reality Chat channel, on Pete's channel. We'll do the Reality Chat, and maybe we can look at some of those news articles.
Yeah, we'll go over them again a bit more and add a few more.
There's been quite a few. Typical, isn't it? Whenever we take a break, there's usually something that happens, or something comes up. But yeah, we'll play a little bit of catch up and really talking about what's been happening recently.
Yeah.
And Thursday night, Steve Tagoose will be on with the mystery show. As far as I know, he's on 8 p.m. on Thursday night on his channel, Steve Tagoose. And please, it's not COVID. I may be coughing, but it's not COVID. I've been thinking maybe I've got to get a little sort of like hat or something to wear that says, not COVID on it or whatever. I've been told now that you can get these little, like a badge, but it's on a lanyard, so you wear it around your neck. But it's like a sunflower, and it's basically like an exemption card, even though it's not an official one, because the government said they won't do one, and the doctors, the GPs have been told they can't issue anything like a sick note to say that you're or whatever.
Yeah.
But some organisation out there is doing these little exemption things that you can wear if you want to. Personally, I'm not going to bother with anything like that. If anyone asks me, I'll just say I'm exempt. If they want more details, I say, no, sorry, Data Protection Act, leave me alone. Do you want my money or not? I'm in here to shop. Do you want my money or not? If not, I'll fuck off somewhere else.
See, I'm all right. We're all right in Wales. We don't have to do it.
Yeah. Apart from on the transport.
On the transport. On the buses, not on the trains. So it's like... But that's how they're doing it.
Virus again.
Yeah, the magic virus again. It's crazy, isn't it?
Doesn't like the train, so it stays out of the train. Yeah, thanks again, folks. Don't let the shit get you down, but don't don't succumb to their bullshit. Keep your face into the storm if you can, and take a break every now and then. Everybody needs a little bit of R&R. And if you can, if you're able to, if you get the opportunity to, spend some time in nature, even if that's just to go for a walk somewhere or just sit under a tree or sit on a park bench. Yeah, hopefully there's somewhere green near you that you can get to. If you can't, just try leaving your phone or whatever device at home and just go for a walk. Even if you're walking through urban streets and whatever, find a tree-lined street somewhere and just take a walk around and enjoy the sights and sounds of being outside in nature, away from the media bullshit.
Yeah, good advice.
I'll leave it at that for now. Thanks again for tuning in. We'll see you again soon.
Cheers, Cookie. Cheers, all in the chat as well. Cheers.
Thanks for running the chat. Sorry, I haven't caught up with the chat for the last however long when I've been ranting. Sorry, folks. It's the usual kind of thing from me. Hello to everyone in the chat. Thanks for joining in. Mary today, hello. Ridiculizer, hello. Dotty, hello. James Owen, hello. Chat room ninja. And I know there was a few other people. Dino. And did I see Cheris Rosin in there before earlier? Region 1 Resistance, hello. Spitting facts. Shield Destroyer, hello. I'm spitting facts. I find it hard to spit now. You can't spit as well when you ain't got teeth, I think. It's something just about, whatever. Yeah. Talking about how to spit, forget that. Yeah, moving on quickly. CMB, hello. I saw you just jumped in the chat room at the end. I've lost half the chat room again. Oh, anyway, yes. Thanks, folks. Good night. It's good night from me, and it's good night from him.
Good night.